Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So this is a live stream. I said I would do a live stream tonight. And so we've got two people on so far. We'll wait a little bit. The title of the live stream is The Triumph of Gold. You can also ask questions, of course. It's a Q&A as usual, and I'll try to answer them as well as possible. Hi, Labbook84, nice to see you. So, yeah, just wait a little bit. Hi, Sergio, St. Andrews. Yeah, how's the weather in St. Andrews? Great. I watched a video today about old Tom Morris. He was the guy who was the greenkeeper at St. Andrews in the 19th century, famous golfer as well. Hi, Calvin Cooper, Parlando. Hi, everyone. Tom, good evening. Wake up after a long weekend and gold rests at $186,000 an ounce. That would be interesting. S. Rick W, good evening. Mario, hi, Rick. Hi, Rocky Balboa. Rocky Balboa, I remember that. Rocky Balboa. Pad, West Central Indiana. Okay, great. That's where you are then, Pad. Yeah, the weather's pretty good here in London as well. The last few days, it's cooled down. It had been really hot, but it's now a little, cooler. So it's really nice, and it's not raining. So yeah, we've got quite a few people on already. I wanted to talk about this book, The Triumph of Gold, by Dr. Franz Pig. And I didn't pay $92 for it, but that's what it sold for. I think this book was published in the 80s. 1986 was the second printing, and they printed it until 1989. And I think they only printed about like 105,000 copies or something like that. You can get it on Amazon. Yeah, if you, I'll talk about that in a minute. See who's here. Orlando, melting in Orlando. Yeah, Florida at this time of the year is really, really hot, isn't it? Calvin Cooper, hi, Mario. I know this isn't about money. However, did you own a Dodge Monaco 19? No, Calvin, I think you asked me that question already in one of the videos on the comment section. No, my nickname is Monaco, not Monaco. Monaco has got nothing to do with Monaco. And 1960, my name is Mario Ineco, and my dad was also Mario, so he just called him Monaco for short. And 1964 was when I was born. I never heard of a Dodge Monaco. Is it nice though? $100 was quite the price in the 80s. Yeah, $92. That's right. I mean, I'll read a little bit about Franz Pig, about the guy who wrote this book. So it says, Franz, this is an introduction by Dr. Henry Jarecki. It says, Franz Pig, the world's foremost gold bug, I think he died in 1990, is dead, a prolific writer and theoretician for the last 65 years. He was for 35 years the publisher of the Black Market Yearbook, which, in deference to the respectability of his central banker clients. So this guy's clients were central bankers, right? It says, he renamed Pig's Currency Yearbook instead of the Black Market Yearbook. He and I were friends from the time he directed me in 1967 to the bullion firm I now lead until his death last week. What I admired about him was not his predictive ability, but his irascibility, energy, and rigid morality. True enough, he predicted, or said he did, the 1926 devaluation of the French franc, the 1931 devaluation of the British pound, and the meteoric rise in gold that emerged in the late 60s. But those predictions were not, when one knew him, predictions at all. They were rather words of Hosea declaring that the children of Sodom and Gomorrah were behaving badly and would thus come to no good. They were not any more than Hosea's, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Hosea's words, practical guideposts. Not at all. He knew more about when gold or currencies would go up or down than anyone else can in this random world. So the introduction is interesting. It just tells you, it's really hard to predict prices and things, but one thing that's easy to predict is the way things will go in the future, because the system we got right now is just a dishonest, fraudulent system based on debt, where a few people can create money out of thin air, right? So let's see what else we've got here. Did anyone buy the 2018 silver Krugerrands? I saw an advert for that. I haven't bought that yet. Silver Krugerrand. QWERTY, cheers from Brasilia. All right, Brasilia, capital of Brazil since the early 60s. Tom 2806, biography of Franz Spick, New York Times Archive, 1985. Gold at critical point has to go up. Buyers have to come in. RR. Yeah, does it really matter? I mean, when this guy recommended the guy who wrote the introduction to this book, when he recommended he buy gold was at $35 an ounce. And then I think in 1990, it was around 400 or wherever it was back then. So it did go up, tenfold. Since his prediction, he does say, the death of the dollar. He talks about the death of the dollar. The dollar is still around, but it's a slow death, isn't it? But I think it will pick up. There will be a point where people will lose confidence. Let's see. Super Breck, hi Mario, you were the best. Greetings from Holland. Wow, thank you. Thanks very much for that compliment. Holland, yeah, I haven't been to. The only time I've been to Holland is I had a connection flight at Schiphol Airport. Unfortunately, that's the only time. I should go there. I mean, it's not far from where I am, Holland. Shaving cream is the new gold standard. Since the government failed us and is about to lead us to a second Great Depression, should it be abolished? The government, well, yeah, I think the government is also a reflection of the public that elect the government. Of course, we are misled a lot by the media, by academia, by the so-called experts, and that's why I'm always contrarian. I'm always skeptical and never try to believe in what I'm told. Why am I like that? Well, I think my father was a bit like that. Yeah, he was definitely like that. My dad was always a contrarian. He seemed to everyone used to ask him, what do you think? And his answers, people didn't understand it because he kind of had a contrarian thinking. So maybe it's in my genes. I don't know. Just ask questions and be honest as well, I think. NASDAQ SC, is the Russian money behind Trump skyscrapers? I don't, it's not only Russian money, the Trump towers of this world and stuff. It's all, there's a lot of money from everywhere. Trump has benefited greatly from all the globalization we've had in the last 35, 40 years. It's not only Russian money, it's money from everywhere in the world that goes to New York. People from third world countries who make a lot of money, they go and park their money in the US. they park it at Trump Tower or wherever. It's not just Russia. I'm sure there is a lot of Russian money. There's a lot of Arab money. There's a lot of European money, a lot of South American money, I would say. So it's not just the Russians. City Guyable. Caught report has more net longs for silver than gold. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have read on Silver Doctors, this guy called Marshall Swing. He follows those caught reports a lot. He trades the futures, but apparently, according to him, he sees a big implosion of the system, and he's getting out of futures trading, out of the paper money, and going all into bullion. He thinks we've got till by the end of the month. He sees some pretty bad happening. I'm like I said, it's predicting things is really hard, but it's interesting to read about those things. Roger Rose, crypto will be the currency of the future, but maybe 20, 30 years away before the dollar is dead. Not too sure about that. The dollar will, in name will survive, but it will be the dollar today is completely different than it was in 1990, for example. So in a way, he's been right. The dollar keeps dying and dying. T. Hambone, Mara, do you think deflation will happen first, as Jim Rogers says, or do you think central banks will use the ESF to continue to drive prices higher? I don't know. We're having inflation, really. If you look at the amount of debt they created, amount of money they print in the last 10 years, that's inflation. We've had $21 trillion of new money printed by the major central banks. So I don't understand how someone can say we have deflation. So inflation is a monetary phenomenon. Roger Rose, greetings from Texas. Great. Arab money. Yeah, Arab money as well in the Trump Towers. That's right. And it's not just Trump Towers. I think a lot of the properties that Trump, a lot of them, he just kind of gives his name for it. He actually doesn't own them. So he's kind of franchised, the name Trump as well. North Carolina, JM. Hey, JM. I've been to South Carolina, but not North Carolina. The Rocky Balboa. Yeah, implosion chatter. It's been, it has picked up the last few months. It's always around. That's, it's always around. I think we need to keep living our lives without waiting for anything like that. But be prepared, of course. I'm just going to read some of the comments he made here. This is towards the end, and it's he says here, and I'll show you. I can't see. I think the light's not very good, but I'll read it. Labouk 84, thank you for the super chat donation. I really appreciate that. So on page 119, he says, the U.S. government should build a monument to Johannes Gutenberg. So that's the guy who invented the printing press. So he says, I have 3 unofficial deflators, the general middle class index, the upper middle class index, and for the politician, labor czars, pimps, and TV idols. I have my rich, corrupt underworld index. These indices show the dollar is worth maybe 3 cents of its 1940 value. If it's worth a nickel, call me a liar. And this was around 1986. So I would say the 1940 dollar now is probably worth like 1.5 cents. So that's really interesting. NASDAQ SC, thank you for the super chat donation. I appreciate it too. Tony, majority of people do not understand what is happening. Inflation is destroying people's ability to live. I agree. We're being lied to. We're told that we only have that inflation's too low by the Fed, that they need to keep rates low because we're undershooting inflation. It's a complete pile of what. So he says here, Franz Pick, the $1,000 US savings bond is now worth only $30 in unofficial constant $1940. This is how the government expropriates the wealth of the people who trust it. That's why I say, when people say, "Oh, I have a Series 7 qualification," I had like the equivalent of Series 7 here in the UK as well, but they still keep advising clients to buy bonds, and they're failing their fiduciary. How can I say? They're failing their clients' trust, in my opinion. So it says here, he also goes on to say, however, Washington has not tried to compensate the patriotic buyers of bonds for their loss of purchasing power. They didn't even get an income tax reduction for the debasement of their bonds. The US government should build a monument to Johannes Gutenberg, the man who invented the printing press 500 years ago. They should put it up in front of the Treasury building, which should be named after him. People think of Gutenberg as the printer of great Bibles, which indeed he was. But in doing so, he also created the machinery for expropriation. Yeah, so this is a really fun book to read. You saw that by the comments he made. I really recommend it. I will come back to it in a minute. So let's look at the questions. Pat, I think we could go all the way down to 1,170 range in gold. I would expect a huge amount of buyers if we hit that number very quickly, push to 1,500, keep stacking. Yeah, as I said, I know I cover the price every day, not only of gold, of the major assets, but the important thing is that just keep stacking if you can and hold on to it if you can. Only sell it in case of emergencies if you need, to spend it. T. Hambone, if the constitutional dollar is 371.25 grams of silver, that would mean that around 2,000 ounces of silver is less than $150 back then. Thoughts? Well, of course, that's just goes to show how what they call a dollar today, or the Federal Reserve note, is a complete, how can I say, imposter. It's not really a dollar, is it? It's the same thing with pound sterling. Not really what they say it is. Troy ounce, 31.1035. That's a number I've known for years. That, I think, that's the most important number to know if you're a physical buyer of gold or silver, to know the grams per troy ounce. Adrian MS, will bond buyers go on strike? Recent U.S. Treasury offerings was taken up by 50%. JP Morgan picked up the rest. Government will have to offer higher rates. Yeah, I mean, there's, as I've said, I think even the professionals, the fund managers, the pension funds for major institutions, pension funds for like universities, local governments, big unions, they've all been like, how can I say, brainwashed into thinking that paper money, government bonds are safe investments. And they've been also lied to, and they believe that inflation is low. So if bonds are off, if the yield on the 10-year or 30-year is around 2.8 or 3%, they think it's a good investment, because they're saying, oh, inflation is only about 1.5%. And we need to buy this, or because we got to guarantee some income for our clients. But they're, in real terms, they're losing out big time. Cost of living is going up. Yeah. So So what I think is going on, there's another book that I like. It's called Extraordinary Popular Delusion of and the Madness of Crowds. This one here by Charles Mackay. It talks about the Mississippi bubble, the John Law bubble. And the interesting thing about today, I think we are in a period of extraordinary popular delusion. And what is the extraordinary popular delusion? Well, that we can live off paper money, that we can live off just printing money without creating any value. And that's been going on, full scale, I would say, in the last 10 years since the crisis of '08. But it actually started after 1971 when Nixon took the anchor off the monetary system and started creating, money out of thin air. So I think that's the extraordinary popular delusion of today. And the thing about this delusion of today, the fiat money delusion that we think we can live off printed money, I think it's lasted so long compared to the periods in this book of bubbles, that when the day of reckoning comes, I think it will be how can I say, what's the word? Unmasking. It's going to be really biblical, I would say, what's going to happen. I think we will be prepared for it. I think it can be a blessing in disguise, though, for the future, because we need to get out of this delusion. We need to go back to an honest world, in my opinion. I know it's never going to, humans are not perfect, but right now I think we've gone too far to one direction. The boat is listing too much to the side, so it's going to come right back. We need to be more stable. And why is that happening? I think it's because Nixon, took the anchor off the system. European central banks and European governments took the anchor off the system in Europe around the time of World War I. So we've been rudderless. So it's going to be truly like biblical, or it's going to be an unmasking apocalypse. That's what I meant. And by apocalypse, I don't mean the end of the world. I just mean the unmasking of this. The thing is, people that even the well-educated people, people who are professionals. It's not only the general public that has been fooled. I think the great majority of people have been fooled into thinking that paper is valuable. They denigrate gold. So I think Mr. Pick will be right in the end. There will be a triumph of gold. And we need to be patient. It's triumphing every day. You can keep gold, you're triumphing, in my opinion. Theodore McIntosh, is gold truly useful, Mario? Its main use is jewelry. Silver has actual industrial purpose. Theodore, gold is money. That's all it is. It's also used as jewelry. Why do you think central banks keep about 30,000 tons of gold if it was useless? Because they know they need that as an insurance, because they know how fraudulent their paper money is. So, I mean, that should answer your question, that central banks keep all that gold. Why would the Chinese and the Russians been buying physical gold now as well and selling treasuries? So let's go see what else he says here. Just pick something interesting here. Oh, interesting. The three fraudulent U.S. government bankruptcies, right? Most people think, oh, the U.S. has never defaulted, but let's see what Mr. Pick says. Let's see, page 27. So, the three fraudulent U.S. government bankruptcies. There have been three fraudulent state bankruptcies in the history of the United States. The first was in January 1934. The official price of gold jumped from $20.67 per troy ounce to $35. Yeah, that was the Gold Act of 1934. The second, the dollar devaluation, a comic book event, took place in December 1971. The official price of gold increased from $35 per ounce to $38 per ounce. Then on February 12th, 1973, the dollar was devalued for the third time. The official price of gold increased to $42.22. Well, did you actually know that the price of gold right now is accounted at $42.22 by the US Treasury, even though we're trading at over $1,200? So that's interesting to note as well. And he goes on to say the two most recent devaluations alone amount to about 18%. If we continue to do this, we are going to ruin the United States and we may drift into dictatorship. Wow, I think he's been right about that, hasn't he? Ruined the United States. Look at how much debt we have now in the US, 21 trillion, also here in the UK. And he says, and we may drift into dictatorship. I agree with him. All the surveillance, all the the war on terror and all the laws they've passed. In the UK, they can arrest you and keep you, hold you for 48 hours with no charge. So he's been right. The destiny of currency is and always will be the destiny of the nation. Okay. So let's go back to the questions. Thomas, let's see if I missed some here. Tyler Durden, is that Tyler Durden from Zero Hedge? And how much silver do the banks hold? They don't hold, most central banks don't hold silver anymore. Silver Mountain, Sanjit digital currency removes all privacy from transactions. Do you support that? Theodore McIntosh, thanks, Mario. You have a great channel. I just think that gold as money is a scam of itself. I live in Washington State. There are tons of gold here, and that could be mined, and yet the regulators make it impossible. Well, that's not the fault. It's not the fault of gold that you can't prospect and mine the gold. It's the politicians. Yeah, in the UK, it's the same thing. I went to Wales a few years ago, and you can only prospect on private land, like on farms. If you try to go in a river, a public river, they've got all the regulations, but that's not the fault of gold. The thing is, gold has been a store of value for thousands of years. So I think it will remain so for many years, or for 1,000 years to come, in my opinion. Alexander, do you think gold and silver alone can rid the world of central banking, or will cryptocurrencies be essential? I think cryptocurrencies are going to help a lot. Yeah, I think cryptocurrencies do have a future. They will help decentralize things, and hopefully it will help bring down the central banks. And maybe we can get our gold back, because all the gold that the central banks hold, they were stolen from the public. Yeah, they were stolen. And the excuse used to steal all the gold is usually war, isn't it? That's what in Europe in 1914, they stole all the gold. And they did steal it. They call it, oh, we're going to stop convertibility. That's a euphemism for theft. In the US, they did it in 1933, but they used War Powers Act from the First World War, which they kept in the books. So there you go. What else? TNT TV, what do you think about Michael Pinto? Is that Michael Pinto you mean, I think? Yeah, Michael Pinto interview with Greg Hunter on the coming Fed action in October. I haven't listened to that one yet. Tony Blaylock, Meyer, did you see Bloomberg talking about LIBOR in 2021 going away? Yeah, it's just a reference rate. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York and the New York banks are trying to get together their own, um, their own reference rate. It could go away, if the dollar becomes less and less important globally. The LIBOR will become less and less important. Why? Because LIBOR is the London Interbank Offered Rate, and it came about in the 60s when a lot of dollar was traded in London. So that's why. So I don't think it's a reference rate for uh, hundreds of billions of derivatives, but yeah, it could cause some accidents, but I don't think it's as critical as some people think. Daryl Lowry, when was the City of London created? I think it's Middle Ages, like, or 1100s. They've been around for a long time. The guilds of the City of London, and they're given. I think the Normans gave them a lot of power. After the Norman conquest in the 11th century, they kept their independence. So the City of London, it's a corporation, right? Just like Washington D.C. is not a state; it's a district, and the Vatican as well. Where's the Libyan gold, Ukrainian gold? Any info? Well, ask the U.S. Treasury; they should know, or the Federal Reserve. Yeah, you can give them a call. I mean, go on their website and then call them and maybe ask. I'm sure they will answer your question. Not. um, Parlando, do you believe the story that the Fed has gold storage somewhere in the Grand Canyon? No, I don't. Um, there's talk that back then in the early 1900s that there were big deposits of gold in in that area of the United States, but it hasn't been. If it has, and I think people did try to find gold there, or mine, or explore for gold, but they didn't really find much gold there. But Big Swear seems to think there's huge amounts of gold there. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I think the Fed was not created because of that. That's what Big Swear says. The Fed was created in 1914 because they knew they were going to have a war and they needed to finance that war. So that's why they did it. And why do I think that? Well, I would listen to the video Norman Dodd interview with G. Edward Griffin, and how the Carnegie Foundation was talking about how they needed a war already in 1908, right? So I don't think it's got anything to do with the Grand Canyon. EAC 2611. You, Peter Schiff, Jim Rogers, and Ron Paul are right that the dollar will lose its hegemony. I am an American and have some gold, but it will still hurt U.S. standard of living. Of course it will. It will just mean that you won't. Yeah, it will hurt your standard of living. I've always noticed, going to the U.S. here from the U.K. the last 25 years, or even before that, everything was cheaper in the U.S. compared to like England, or if you were from, when I lived in Switzerland. Things are going to get more expensive. The dollar is going to be worth less. Americans have been spoiled because they've been able to print their money and not earn any real money and buy things from foreigners, while foreigners have to earn their dollars, right? So it might be a good thing in the longer term, because I'm not having a go at Americans, but you've had it too good. You've been able to print money out of nothing, out of thin air, and buy real things. That's why when there is a deficit, a trade deficit, and trade wars, and Trump keeps going on about how Americans are being ripped off. But I'm sorry, aren't foreigners being ripped off as well when you guys can print money out of thin air and buy things for nothing except for paper? I know you have to earn it, but the U.S. government doesn't have to earn anything. But in the other countries of the world, the only way to earn dollars is to provide some value, right? Because they can't print dollars. Mark Robinson, do you think the cabal is in cahoots with the pension funds so they can steal all the pension money and pay the money managers? Yeah, I think so too. There's talk, the big banks, they're too big to fail, right? They're like overseen by the BIS. There's also talk of making fund managers like BlackRock and all the other big, can't think of, or PIMCO, to protect them because they even the hedge funds. I know, when I worked in the city, one of the guys I worked with, he had a really big client, a hedge fund guy, which I won't say the name, but I heard from my colleague, oh, so and so, he went to Frankfurt last week and he met with the ECB, and I thought, why would he meet with the ECB? Well, and this was just about the time where they wanted to keep interest rates low, right? So yeah, they're in cahoots with the pension funds, with the hedge funds. They meet all these guys, and it's all manipulated. I'm trying to get everyone's question here. I'm sorry if I don't get everyone's questions. Someone is, let's see. Adrian MS. Gordon Brown sold most of gold in 1999 when gold was its lowest price, sarcastically known as the brown bottom. Yeah, I know. He sold 300 tons of Britain's gold, and he pre-announced it. So the price was actually around 300 when he announced it, and then it dropped. And he had pre-announced months ahead. Some people speculate that he was trying to help the bullion banks because they had massive shorts, and there was a short squeeze. So, and some people even argued that it was for Goldman Sachs. I think that could be true. He did that to save the bullion banks from defaulting. Uh, Pappy 3D Monaco, are you religious? Well, I was raised in Brazil. Most people are Roman Catholic, but my parents weren't that religious. I never really went to church except for like weddings and stuff. I did go to boarding school for a couple of years when I was about 10 to 12, and we had a church service every Sunday. And I did my first communion at boarding school. But I don't go to church, but yeah, I think yeah, you can be religious without going to church. Kathleen Smith, when this all crashes, it will be bad. Lots of pain to go around, and sad because most Americans have no idea what's coming. It really isn't their fault. We're not told the truth. Yeah, I agree, Kathleen Smith. It's really hard. We're lucky that for some reason, we're awake to this deception, and it's not only in America; it's all over the place. Warning signs: medical cartel is there to make you sick, so not to bankrupt Social Security. That's the other, not only the banking system is corrupt, also the pharmaceutical system is corrupt. I think it was under Bush, the elder, that Congress passed a law that pharmaceutical companies or drug makers in the US have no liability. No one can take them to court. They're protected by Congress. That's the only industry that is above the law. So, and yeah, pharmaceuticals, they make you, they prescribe you a drug, and then that drug leads to them prescribing even more drugs because of all the side effects. I think it's a scam as well. Sajir Ashraf, Monaco, do you think Saudis will dump petrodollar system if America Supreme Court reveals Saudi involvement in 9/11? That's possible. I mean, they already released quite a bit of information about that, but it was all quite redacted, wasn't it? That's possible. I mean, the Saudis are their relationship with China and Russia is, growing. I spoke about that in a video a few weeks ago. Dr. Honeypot, how do you feel as copper as hedging like gold or silver? Using copper to hedge gold and silver? Well, I haven't really followed copper too much. I mean, copper and silver are more related than gold, I would say. Shane Virtue, are you a pagan? No, I don't think I'm a pagan. Girl OG, how many Russians and all of them tell me? No, many Russians and all of them tell me that Putin is working for the common men. What we see in the news is just propaganda. I agree, Gur. I think that's true. I think the Russians realized that they were hijacked by the globalists for 70 years, under the Soviet system, and they know their enemy. So, and I think President Putin knows that. There's total propaganda. Here in the UK, it's even comical listening to the mainstream media talk about President Putin. I laugh about it now, but it's really, and I think a lot of people here buy it, but a lot of people here know as well. I think have awoken to, all this propaganda. Johnny Deep, I sold 33 ounces of gold yesterday at 1,200. Wow, that's a low price. I gave up. Keep crashing the prices. Kept a few in case. So did you need the money, Johnny? Is that why you sold? I don't understand why you sold it. It's like savings. So hopefully you did it because you needed to pay a bill. Lorraine Weymouth, what will happen in the managed reset, please, Mario? Thanks for all your work. Well, a managed reset would probably happen over a weekend, over a holiday. So only the insiders would know about it. So you won't be able to react or to prepare for it unless you already have, you've been with gold. So that's what a managed reset would be. A market-based reset just happens naturally. They let the market do it, or they use the bullion banks to do it. I hope that helps. Mila Vanessa, Mario, why is Japanese yen one of safe haven assets? Well, it's one of the major currencies just because it's one of the biggest economies, and it's been convertible for many decades. And Japan has a huge government bond market, very liquid. So that's why. And it's part of the club, the major, the dollar, the yen, the euro, and sterling. So that's why. Hector Dallahos, do you own cryptos? Yeah, I do. I've got some Bitcoin, some Ether, and I've got quite a big position in EOS. And now that I've got EOS, I've had it since I went through the ICO, I registered it, and right now I've got 10 other new tokens that have been airdropped. The latest one I got was I think it was today, Everypedia. It's like a Wikipedia based on the blockchain, and the symbol for their token is IQ. And I actually, it's already trading on on the Chains exchange. That's CHINCE.com. And I looked at the tokens I have, and it's worth quite a few $100s already. So yeah, I think it's going to keep growing my portfolio of cryptos because of the EOS airdrops keep coming. I've got 10 tokens that I didn't have a month ago, and quite good. It depends, of course, how many EOS you had, and if you had registered and you went through the mainnet on June 2nd. Shane Virtue, the most undervalued asset in the world is silver. I agree. If I missed any of your questions, please write them again, because sometimes I have to answer a question for a long time and I miss. It goes through the Sajir Ashraf. Why Trump is trying to destroy Petrodollars by threatening Saudis to lower gas prices? Is he mad if petrodollar dies, American economy? Well, I think it's he wants to do it because he knows that the system is not sustainable. So he wants, I think that's what he wants to do. He's going to say, oh, look, it wasn't me, it was the Saudis, right? He's doing a lot of things that kind of don't make sense, but maybe, I don't know. JM, Mary, what are your thoughts on the price of oil these days? Yeah, oil has come off in the last few days. I still think the longer term trend is higher for oil. And the key resistance for WTI is around $73, $74. GER OG, yeah, Norwegian krona does usually well if oil goes up a lot. Um, yeah, so yeah, it's a good currency, I think, to have, even though I guess Norway has a lot of their sovereign wealth fund has a lot of equities, maybe. But yeah, it's a currency that probably not as liquid and easy to have access to, I would say, as the Japanese yen or the euro. But I don't think it's a bad currency out of the fiat currencies, of course. Lee Jenkins gets some Litecoin too. I've had Litecoin in the past. I'm not too sure about Litecoin. Kathleen Smith, I also have a big position. EOS, hang on in there. We'll come back. Yeah, the price has come off. I look at it more as a a project or as a business. So I'm not concerned either. I think it's got a good future. There's a lot of like hiccups, I think, at the moment. With all the price of the RAM that is going up a lot. Uh, there's a lot of questions about the big whales and the votes, but I think it will be worked out. I still think it's a good, it has a bright future. Got kinesis? No, I don't have that. No, I don't. I have heard of Glint, Paul Herbert. I have a Glint card and the app. I have a little bit of gold in there, not much at all, a few £100 worth. I haven't used it because, to be honest, I use gold more as a savings, not as to spend. And I think, as Gresham laws states, bad money drives good money out of circulation. Right now, I'd rather spend the paper money than the gold. So yeah, Glint is a good app. Theodore McIntosh, I've been shorting EOS since $15. Pretty much been employing me. Well, you see, I don't look at EOS as a trading tool, and I don't know how you can short EOS. I haven't shorted it, but I've been I accumulated it through almost a year through the ICO. I registered, you know, my wallet, ERC20 wallet. And because I had the EOS on June 2nd, when they took the snapshot, I'm getting all these airdrops. And as I said earlier today, one of the airdrops I got is worth quite a bit. Like I calculated, if I sold it now, which I won't, it's about $400. So, and I haven't been shorting EOS; I've been holding it. So I think it's if you're a trader, yeah, congratulations, you've done well. But as an investor, I think it's the wrong thing to trade EOS. It's like trading your house or trading a business. If you have a business, you keep the business running, right? That's what EOS is. It's the infrastructure for the next blockchain generation, I think. Lee Jenkins, what do you think about Ripple replacing SWIFT payment system? They have other 100 banks and financial institutions. To be honest, I couldn't care less about the payment system, the banking payment system. I hope it collapses, SWIFT, and yeah, I hope the banking system, fiat money system collapses. I try not to use it too much. I think yeah, I'm not really into Ripple. Rick W., have you ever checked a project called IOTA? Instead of using blockchain, they use the Tangle. Is it the Internet of Things? I'm not sure. I think I've heard of IOTA, and I'm not sure if it's the same one. Lorraine Weymouth, Trump and Putin after New World Order. I hope so. I hope you're right. Sajer, do you think Middle East conflict is about to protect petrodollar system or to offer greater Israel project? Someone told me the Zionist Jews wants to expand Israel borders. Sajer, I think it's more about keeping Israel's neighbors weak and in chaos. Because yeah, I don't think Israel is trying to expand its borders. I guess they have in the past, but I think it's more of keeping their their neighbors weak, and I don't understand that. Maybe it's because they realize they shouldn't be there. That land was not theirs in 1948, so they need to keep the people around them weak, divided, and in conflict. Because if they're unified and healthy economies, they won't put up with Israel, I think. Kathleen Smith about the Rockefellers in China. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. There's also people who say that the Rockefellers were behind the Soviet Union, that David Rockefeller actually went to Moscow in the 1960s, and he fired one of the, I think Khrushchev or someone over there. Yeah, you read some of the books. I think it was Anthony Sutton. Just Google Anthony Sutton books. He's written about. There's many books that talk about how 2/3 of the revolutionaries in 1917, when they brought down the Russian Tsar, a lot of the guys came from Lower Manhattan. They're all New Yorkers, financed by the bankers in New York. And that's why I think Putin does what he does, because he knows that who the bankers are. They're not no good. They want to keep Russia weak, the Russian nation. The other thing as well is that Russia has a lot of natural resources, a lot of clean water, And I think that's going to be a big thing in the future. So the West wants to have a foothold in Russia. Warning signs. The Federal Reserve Bank is a private banking system created by foreign interests. Yeah, it's a hybrid. The Federal Reserve, private and public, government and public. But I agree with you. Creature from Jekyll Island, right? Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The inflation is more like 10% nowadays, RR. Don't disagree with you. Theodore McIntosh, Mario, your book recommendations are always outstanding. Oh, thanks. Thanks. Uh, PEH2, what are your thoughts on the Schiff Voorhees Bitcoin debate? I didn't listen to that debate. I know Peter Schiff. I don't think Peter Schiff, yeah, I think he doesn't want to understand cryptocurrencies and the blockchain. I thought he was better than that, to have an open mind. Um, but I haven't listened to that debate. Illegal immigrants and house prices goes up. Interesting. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Shane. So maybe you could repeat the question. Government gave immigrants houses. Uh, that's maybe so a little bit, but I think it's all a distraction. The reason why housing is like unaffordable and still is because the central banks had to bail out the banks. Here in the UK and also in the US, a big part of the bank's assets were mortgage loans and real estate loans. So they need to keep they need to keep these loans and these securities overvalued. What do you think QE was for? Quantitative easing was to buy all these uh, real estate loans to keep real estate assets high, and that's why house prices and real estate prices have stayed high. Um, and wages haven't kept up. Cost of living has risen. I'm sorry. I think it's a big distraction to say that house prices go up because of immigration. It might have a small impact, but it's all to do with the monetary policy. I mean, I've benefited from it. About 3 years ago, I sold my old house and was able to pay everything off and buy another house. If prices hadn't been artificially high as they're now, I wouldn't have been able to do that. But that's the way things are. Zimmer, will Brexit affect the British economy? What will happen to commercial relations between UK and Europe? Well, the British economy has already been in a recession for the last 10 years. Brexit is just a big distraction. It just creates a bit of uncertainty. We don't even know what's going to happen, how. It's a mess, really, because we don't know how Brexit is going to be implemented. They've been, working on it for 2 years, and they haven't been able to sort it out. Dr. Honeypot, yeah, check out. I have looked at copper in the past, but yeah, copper is more of a base metal. I look more at the precious metals, but I will look at copper, the copper futures. Yeah, Alex Alexander, housing and banking go hand in hand. You're right. Oh, PEH2, good question. Why do you think Ireland is number 3 in US treasures with over 300 billion? Well, because Google, a lot of the big multinationals, Amazon, a lot of the big banks, they've they've created headquarters in Ireland. Why? Because it's a it's a tax haven for foreign companies. So what do they do with all the money that's parked over there? Well, they buy treasuries. It's not Ireland itself. It's not the Irish government or Irish pension funds. I mean, when I do my videos on YouTube, the monetization, when I get paid by Google, it comes from Google Ireland. So that's why. What does it mean copper price is going down more? Well, it just means that copper is used a lot in construction and house building, copper wires, pipes and stuff. So it's a reflect, and also in China as well, big infrastructure development. So if prices are going down, it means the economy is weakening. It's a bellwether for that. RGTV 100. I'm 70 years old, only have 40,000 held in US dollar currency. What should I do? Buy gold and silver? Can't afford house, not in bank, under mattress, so to speak. So, so you've got 40,000 in the bank? I'm not sure what you mean. I would, yeah. I mean, I would definitely buy a bit of gold and silver. Don't have to buy the whole thing, maybe half of it. 10,000 in gold, 10,000 in silver. Kathleen Smith, Monaco, I sold mortgages and knew they made bad loans, and that is what woke me up to the lies. And it's amazing how deep the rabbit hole goes. Yeah, I mean, before they were able to securitize mortgages, I think it started in the late 70s. A bank used to lend to, write a mortgage to a home buyer, and the bank held that mortgage. They couldn't sell it on. But nowadays, it's all securitized, and what that means is that the person who sells you the mortgage, they just want the commission, and then they just pass it on to investors. So they don't care. They just want to sell as many mortgages as possible to make as much income as possible. And it hasn't changed, has it, Kathleen? I don't think. Yes, Sadir, the Saudis are big investors in the UK. You're right. Um, yeah, they're probably not too happy in the last 5, 6 years. The value of the pound's gone down a lot. Um, I guess property prices have gone up a bit to compensate for it, but it hasn't really been great. So I'm gonna take 2 or 3 more questions here. I'm gonna call it a day. I've been on for about just over an hour, so I'll take 2 or 3 more questions. Shane Virtue, is everything going to have to be alternative currency backing? Gas tokens, movie tokens, car tokens, food tokens, elimination of currencies? Well, it could be, things you could monetize, like activities, like Steemit is social media tokens, and that's has a value. I know it's come down lately, so we could end up like that. Who knows? It's very difficult to say, but I think the fiat system is dying. Zimo, by the way, did you vote leave Europe or stay in? I didn't vote for that. I didn't vote in the referendum because I have an Italian passport. I've lived here since 1992, and it was only for British passport holders to vote. Hi, Andrea Deity. I wonder if you could say something about the yield curve. Some people are looking at the 2 10-year ends and 1030s. Please answer, would be appreciated. Yeah, the yield curve. I'll just to give you an idea, we are seeing flattening of the yield curve. It's not inverted yet. So, for example, in the last year, the 2-year yield has gone up 125 basis points, and the 30-year has only gone up 7 basis points. So now the difference between those two is only about 35 basis points. So that's definitely, you know, flattening, and that's a sign that the economy could slow down. Gregor Kovacs, Dan Larimer, creator of Steam, is known scammer. I haven't heard that. Have you got some proof, Gregor? I'd like to hear more from you that he's a scammer. I think Steemit has done really well. I'm happy with Steemit. If you've got some proof that he's a scammer, you know, when you call people scammers, you have to have some proof. Lucian Sirbo, Monaco, have you tried Peculium product? Ask Evie. I actually did. I did videos for Peculium. You know, I did sponsored videos for the project. I personally, yeah, I haven't tried Peculium. You know, it's I have some of their tokens that I was given, but I've sold most of my Peculium tokens. I'm not sure if it's going to catch on as a community, and I'm not sure that you can how well it's going to work. All right, so Shane Virtue, why do you follow pagan holidays, Mario? Birthdays especially. What do you mean? I don't understand. What pagan holiday you're talking about? And birthdays? I'm not too sure. So anyway, Shane Virtue. I don't know. Thank you, everyone, for showing up for the live stream. I appreciate the support and yeah, and the interaction. And hopefully we'll do another one soon. I'll let you know through my videos. Okay.